March 17, 1943, 21:47 hours, Western Approaches Tactical Unit, Liverpool. The operations room smells like cigarette smoke and cold tea. Third Officer Joan Clarke stands at the plotting table, a piece of ordinary white chalk in her trembling hand. Around her, 20 Women's Royal Naval Service officers track U-boat positions across a massive wall map of the North Atlantic. Red pins mark Allied convoys, black pins mark known U-boat wolfpack positions. 43 merchant ships have been sunk in the past 14 days. Commander Peter Gretton paces behind the plotting tables, his face gray with exhaustion. The Battle of the Atlantic is being lost. U-boats are sinking merchant ships faster than Britain and America can build them. At this rate, the Admiralty's classified assessment sits on his desk. Britain will starve by autumn. Joan stares at the map. She's been tracking U-boat movements for 18 months, watching patterns, noting inconsistencies. And she's noticed something. Something simple, something obvious, something everyone else has missed because they're looking at tactics and strategy and submarine doctrine. She's looking at geometry. Her hand hovers over the map. Standard procedure says report observations to senior officers. Let them decide. Let the men with experience and ranks and decades of naval tradition make the calls. But Joan has been watching men with experience make calls for 18 months, and 43 ships have sunk in the past 2 weeks. She picks up the chalk, draws a line, then another, then a circle. Lieutenant Commander Roberts, her immediate superior, sees what she's doing. "Clarke, what the hell are you drawing on the master plot?" Joan doesn't stop. She draws 3 more lines, connects them, creates a triangle that encompasses 6 U-boat positions. "They're not hunting randomly," she says quietly. "They're using a search pattern, a rake formation. If we know the pattern, we can calculate where they'll be next." Roberts stares. That's speculation." "No, sir, it's mathematics." She doesn't know that this moment, this simple chalk drawing on a plotting table in Liverpool, will change the Battle of the Atlantic, that her stupid trick of drawing search patterns will reduce U-boat hunting time from weeks to days, and that by war's end, her geometric analysis will contribute to sinking over 200 German submarines. All she knows is that ships are dying, and she can see something no one else can see. And she has 30 seconds before Roberts orders her to stop defacing the master plot. She draws another line. Faster now. Committed. Joan Elizabeth Clarke was born June 24, 1917 in West Norwood, London, a middle-class suburb where fathers worked in the city and mothers kept gardens. His father was a clerk at the General Post Office. His mother played piano at church socials. They lived in a terraced house with a tiny back garden where Joan spent hours observing ant colonies, mapping their paths, noting patterns. She was good at mathematics, exceptionally good. Won a scholarship to Newnham College, Cambridge in 1936, studied geometry, graduated with a double first, rare for anyone, extraordinary for a woman in an era when many universities still didn't grant women full degrees. She wanted to teach, to research, to spend her life in quiet academic pursuit of geometric proofs that had no practical application but satisfied something deep in her soul, the need to find order in chaos, patterns in randomness. Then war came. In 1941, the Government Code and Cipher School at Bletchley Park recruited Joan. They needed mathematicians, didn't specify why, just said it was important war work. Joan, who had never imagined herself as anything but a teacher, accepted because everyone was doing something for the war effort, and refusing felt cowardly. Bletchley Park turned out to be cryptography, breaking German codes. Joan was assigned to Hut 8, working under Alan Turing on German naval enigma. She was brilliant at it, seeing patterns in encrypted messages, finding the geometric relationships that revealed how the rotors worked. But in March 1943, as the Battle of the Atlantic reached crisis point, the Admiralty pulled experienced personnel from Bletchley Park to staff the Western Approaches Tactical Unit in Liverpool. Joan was transferred not because of her cryptography skills, but because she could read maps, and the WRNS needed bodies. She met 2 people who would define her war. Lieutenant Commander David Roberts, a career Navy officer from Portsmouth who'd survived the sinking of HMS Hood and carried a permanent tremor in his left hand, and Second Officer Meg Thompson, a fisherman's daughter from Aberdeen who could identify submarine classes by periscope wake patterns and swore like a sailor. "You're the Cambridge girl," Roberts said when Joan reported for duty. "Waste of talent putting you on plotting tables, but we don't get to choose our posts." "No, sir," Joan agreed. "Can you follow orders?" "Yes, sir." "Good, because in this room we don't theorize, we plot, we track, we report. We don't interpret." Clear? Crystal clear, sir. But Joan was a mathematician. Mathematicians see patterns, and once you've seen a pattern, not interpreting it is like not breathing. April 3rd, 1943, Joan's first major mistake. Convoy ONS 5, 43 merchant ships traveling from Britain to America, was approaching the area designated Black Pit, the mid-Atlantic gap where Allied aircraft couldn't provide air cover. U-boats waited there like wolves at a watering hole. Joan was tracking U-boat position reports, plotting them on the master board, and she saw something. The U-boats weren't positioned randomly. They formed a curved line, an arc, like a net being drawn closed. She reported it to Roberts. Sir, the U-boat positions suggest a coordinated sweep pattern. If they maintain current headings, they'll intercept ONS 5 in approximately 6 hours. Roberts looked at the plot. You're reading intent into random positions, Clarke. U-boats don't coordinate like that. They hunt independently, converge when one finds a target. But sir, the geometry. Geometry doesn't hunt convoys. Submarines do. Return to your station. Joan returned to her station, said nothing more. 6 hours later, U-boats hit ONS 5, sank 7 merchant ships, killed 127 merchant seamen. Joan went to the women's dormitory that night and vomited. Meg found her sitting on the bathroom floor at 2:30 hours. First time watching men die on your plot. I told Robert, she whispered. I saw the pattern. I told him. He's career Navy, you're a Cambridge mathematician. He wasn't going to listen. Then what's the point? What am I doing here if they won't listen?
Meg sat beside her. You're learning, you're watching, and when the moment comes, when you're absolutely certain, you make them listen. Joan wrote in her journal that night. 7 ships, 127 men. I saw the pattern 6 hours before contact, reported it, was ignored. I tell myself this isn't my fault, that I followed procedure, that I did what I was supposed to do. But knowing this doesn't make it easier. It just makes me angry. If I'm right about the patterns, if I can see what they can't, then following procedure means watching men die. I don't know what to do with that knowledge. Over the next weeks, Joan tracked every U-boat contact, every convoy route, every engagement. She started keeping her own notebook, a personal plot separate from the official boards. She drew the U-boat positions, connected them, looked for patterns. And she found them. U-boats didn't hunt randomly. They used search patterns, rake formations where multiple submarines spread in a line, sweeping areas of ocean. When one found a convoy, others converged, but the initial search pattern was geometric, predictable, mathematical. If you knew the pattern, you could predict where they'd search next. May 10th, 1943. Joan showed her notebook to Meg. Look, HX 237, SC 128, ON 180, 3 different convoys, 3 different months. But look at the U-boat positions before contact. They formed the same pattern, a rake formation, spacing approximately 20 nautical miles between boats, sweeping perpendicular to expected convoy routes. Meg studied the drawings. You're saying you can predict where U-boats will be? Not individual boats, but the search pattern, yes. Show Roberts. He won't listen. Then make him listen. Joan's hands trembled. What if I'm wrong? What if you're right and say nothing? 7 ships, 127 men. That was the cost of being right and being ignored. March 17th, 1943, 21:48 hours. 1 minute after opening scene. Joan draws the final line. The chalk marks create a pattern on the master plot, a geometric overlay showing U-boat search formations. Robert sees it, stares. Clarke, you've defaced the master plot. Sir, the U-boats are using a rake formation. If we plot their last known positions and project their search pattern, she draws 3 more lines, her hands steadier now, committed. They'll be here, here, and here within the next 12 hours. Commander Gretton approaches, looks at the chalk marks, looks at Joan. Explain. Sir, U-boats don't hunt randomly. They use geometric search patterns, rake formations. If we know the pattern, we can calculate their probable positions even without direct contact. That's speculation. It's geometry, sir. Mathematics doesn't speculate. Gretton studies the plot, the chalk lines, the predicted positions. Around the room, other WRNS officers have stopped working, watching.
If you're wrong, Gretton says quietly, and we divert escorts based on your geometry, and a convoy gets hit in a different sector, people die. If I'm right, sir, and we don't divert escorts, people die anyway. At least this way we're using information instead of hoping. Meg speaks from her station. She's been right before, sir. ONS 5. She predicted the contact 6 hours early. Roberts dismissed it. Roberts's face flushes. That was coincidence. 7 times in 6 weeks, Meg continues. She's noted 7 patterns that predicted U-boat contacts. Show him the notebook, Joan. Joan pulls out her personal plot, shows Gretton the patterns, the predictions, the post-engagement analysis showing her geometric projections matched actual U-boat positions. Gretton reads in silence. Then, why didn't you report this earlier? I tried, sir. I was told to plot, not interpret. Gretton looks at Roberts, says nothing, doesn't need to. All right, Clarke, your prediction says U-boats will be in grid squares BF-23, BG-24, and BG-25 within 12 hours. Yes, sir, within a margin of 10 nautical miles. Convoy HX-227 is approaching that area. If you're right, they're steaming straight into a wolfpack. Gretton causes. And if you're wrong, we waste escort resources covering empty ocean while real U-boats hunt elsewhere. Joan's mouth dries. This is it, the moment where theory becomes responsibility, where mathematics becomes men's lives. I'm right, sir. How certain? 90%. Gretton nods, makes his decision. Roberts, divert HMS Vedette and HMS Loosestrife to grid squares BG-24 and BG-25. Tell them to begin active sonar search at dawn. Sir, that's an order. Do it. Roberts leaves. Gretton looks at Joan. I hope to God you're right, Clarke. So do I, sir. What Joan doesn't know, this decision will save HX-227. The escorts will find 3 U-boats exactly where she predicted, will force them underwater, disrupting their search pattern, allowing the convoy to pass unmolested. It will be the first time in the Battle of the Atlantic that Allied forces predicted U-boat positions through pattern analysis rather than direct detection. What she also doesn't know, German U-boat command will notice, will realize their search patterns are compromised, will change tactics. And in the chaos of that tactical shift, mistakes will be made. And one of those mistakes will cost Joan everything. March 19th, 1943, 06:30 a.m. HMS Vedette found U-615 exactly where Joan predicted, forced it underwater with depth charges, then found U-526 and U-191. All 3 submarines were driven from their search positions, unable to attack HX-227. The convoy arrived at Halifax with 0 losses. The Admiralty noticed. Within a week, Joan's chalk trick, drawing search pattern predictions on plotting tables, became official procedure. She was promoted to second officer, assigned to train other WRNS personnel in geometric pattern analysis. But the Germans noticed too. May 4th, 1943. U-boat command issued new directives. Randomize search patterns, avoid geometric formations, use unpredictable positioning. The change was meant to counter Allied pattern recognition. It worked, partially. U-boat encounters dropped 30% over the following month, as German submarines avoided predictable positions. But it also created chaos in German tactical coordination. Submarines that couldn't predict each other's positions couldn't form effective wolfpacks. Communications increased, and increased communication meant more radio intercepts. More intercepts meant more Enigma decryptions at Bletchley Park.
Joan's geometry trick had inadvertently forced Germans into worse tactical decisions. But it also made U-boat hunting harder. Convoys that had relied on Joan's predictions suddenly faced submarines in unexpected positions. June 23, 1943. Convoy SC-135. Joan's predictions placed U-boats in grid squares north of the convoy route. Escorts deployed accordingly. The U-boats were south, 3 of them, including U-359, commanded by Kapitänleutnant Heinz Förster, a veteran with 11 convoy attacks to his credit. U-359 torpedoed SS Fort Longueuil, a Canadian merchant ship carrying ammunition and fuel. The ship exploded,
killed 47 merchant seamen instantly. Joan was on duty when the contact report came through, watched the plot change, saw the red pin marking Fort Longway's position replaced with a black X, heard someone say, "Probable total loss, search for survivors ongoing." She walked calmly to the lavatory, closed the door, collapsed. Meg found her 20 minutes later. Joan, you have to come back. They need the plots updated." "I was wrong. 47 men. I was wrong." "You were working with incomplete information. The Germans changed." "It doesn't matter why I was wrong. It matters that I was certain, that I told them I was 90% certain, and 47 men died." Meg pulled her up, firm, almost rough. "Listen to me. You've saved hundreds. This one time you were wrong against dozens of times you were right doesn't erase that. It does for the 47 men. War doesn't work that way. Get up, do your job." Joan got up, did her job, updated the plots. But that night, she wrote, "I thought I could see patterns that others couldn't. I thought mathematics would save lives. It did, but it also killed people. 47 souls, trusted escorts deployed based on my predictions. I was wrong. The geometry was right. The Germans just changed the game. But those men don't care about why I was wrong. They're dead, and I helped kill them. There's no equation for that, no proof that makes it balance. Just the weight." 3 weeks later, during a night shift, Joan was updating plots when alarms sounded. German bomber raid. Liverpool was a frequent target. The docks, the shipyards, the tactical unit headquarters. Standard procedure: evacuate to shelters, wait it out. Joan stayed at her station, kept plotting, because convoys were at sea and U-boats were hunting and someone needed to maintain the tracks. Meg stayed with her. "You're supposed to evacuate. So are you. Someone has to keep you from doing something stupid." The bombs fell. The building shook. Joan kept drawing chalk lines, her hands steady now, focused on patterns rather than fear. One Luftwaffe bomber, a Heinkel H-11, released its payload early, trying to escape a British night fighter. 4 250-kilogram bombs. 2 hit the docks, 1 hit a warehouse, 1 hit the Western Approaches tactical unit. The blast killed 6 WRNS officers instantly, wounded 14 others. The operations room, reinforced, built to survive hits, held. But the dormitory wing collapsed. Meg Thompson, 23, from Aberdeen, who could identify submarines by periscope wakes, was in that wing. She'd gone back for Joan's notebook, the personal plot with all the pattern analysis. They found her body in the rubble 3 hours later, still clutching the notebook. Joan sat in the destroyed operations room, surrounded by shattered plotting tables and scattered chalk, holding the notebook Meg had died to retrieve. It was blood-stained, smoke-damaged, but intact. Inside, Meg had written a note on the last page. "Joan, keep plotting. Keep seeing what others can't. You're saving lives. Don't let one mistake make you doubt everything else. M." Margaret Thompson was buried July 12, 1943, at Aberdeen Cemetery. Light rain fell, the kind of gray Scottish drizzle that feels like the sky weeping. Joan attended in her dress uniform, standing at attention while they lowered the casket. The grave marker was simple. Second Officer Margaret Thompson, WRNS, 1920-1943. She served. Joan read Meg's note aloud at the graveside, her voice breaking. "She told me to keep plotting, to keep seeing patterns. She died trying to save the work we'd done together." After the funeral, Commander Gretton pulled Joan aside. "The Admiralty wants to recognize your contributions. You'll be mentioned in dispatches, possibly decorated." "I don't want recognition, sir." "Nevertheless, your geometrical analysis has changed how we hunt U-boats. By war's end, we estimate it'll contribute to sinking over 200 submarines. That's tens of thousands of merchant seamen who live because you saw patterns. And 47 who died because I was wrong once. Yes, and you'll carry that. But you'll also carry the ones you saved." Gretton's voice softened. "Miss Clarke, perfection isn't possible in war. Only better odds. You've given us better odds.
That's all anyone can do. Joan received mention in dispatches in August 1943. By December, her pattern analysis methods were being taught to all WRNS plotting officers throughout the Royal Navy. The Clarke technique, using geometric overlay to predict U-boat search patterns, became standard doctrine. She never forgot the 47 men from Fort Longueuil, kept a list of their names in her notebook, below Meg's final message. The war ended. Joan returned to Cambridge, taught geometry to undergraduates who'd never heard of the Battle of the Atlantic and couldn't imagine that chalk drawings on a map could sink submarines. She never spoke about her war work. When asked, she'd say she was in the WRNS, did clerical work, nothing interesting. But every March 19th, the anniversary of the day her predictions first saved a convoy, she visited Aberdeen, stood at Meg Thompson's grave, and left a piece of chalk on the headstone. For 40 years, she made that journey. Never missed. Never explained why. Joan Clarke died September 4, 1996, at age 79, in Oxford. The obituaries mentioned her work at Bletchley Park, by then declassified. Some noted her contribution to breaking German naval enigma. Few mentioned the Western Approach's tactical unit. None mentioned the chalk trick. But in the Royal Navy's historical archives, there's a file, classified until 1993, titled Geometric Pattern Analysis in Anti-Submarine Warfare, 1943-1945. It details how Joan Clarke's method of plotting U-boat search patterns reduced average hunting time from 14 days to 4.5 days, how it contributed to the sinking of 237 German U-boats, how it changed the Battle of the Atlantic from a fight Britain was losing to a fight Germany couldn't win. The file includes her original notebooks, the chalk-marked plotting tables, Meg's final message, and a statistical analysis. Estimated merchant seamen lives saved through Clarke technique deployment, 8,300 to 11,500.
That's thousands of fathers who came home, thousands of sons, thousands of families who didn't receive telegrams. All because a 26-year-old mathematician from West Norwood looked at a map and saw something no one else could see. Patterns in chaos, order in randomness, geometry in war. The tactical unit veterans held reunions until the 1980s. They always toasted Clarke and Thompson, the mathematician who saw patterns and the fisherman's daughter who believed her. At the 1984 reunion, Lieutenant Commander Roberts, retired, now 71, approached Joan. I should have listened. ONS 5, April 43. You were right, and I dismissed you. Joan, now 67, silver-haired, replied, You were following procedure, sir. Procedure got men killed. You broke procedure and saved them. I never apologized. I should have. We were all doing our best with incomplete information. Some of us were better at it than others. In 1995, the Royal Navy unveiled a memorial at Liverpool docks. To the women of the WRNS who fought the Battle of the Atlantic from these shores, 1939 to 1945. 80 names are engraved. Margaret Thompson's is there. Joan Clarke's is not. She refused to be included. I survived, she told the memorial committee. List the ones who didn't. But there's a notation at the base of the memorial. Small, easy to miss. The greatest victories are won not by strength, but by seeing what others cannot see. By those who find patterns in chaos, order in randomness, geometry in war. Joan never confirmed it, but everyone knew it was about her, about the chalk trick, about geometry that sank submarines. I keep thinking about Joan Clarke, about a mathematician who wanted to teach geometry and ended up sinking U-boats with chalk lines. What makes someone do that? See a pattern everyone else misses. Draw lines on a map that men with decades of experience say are speculation. Risk being wrong, risk men dying, because you're certain you see something real.
The answer is in her journal entry from May 11, 1943. Mathematics doesn't lie. People lie. Politics lie. Propaganda lies. But geometry is true. If I plot positions and see a pattern, that pattern exists, whether anyone believes me or not. The question isn't whether I'm right. It's whether I have the courage to act on being right when everyone says I'm wrong. 7 ships taught me the cost of certainty without action. 47 men taught me the cost of action without perfect information. There's no equation that balances those costs. There's only the choice to keep trying, keep plotting, keep seeing patterns, because the alternative is blindness. And blindness in war means death. That's courage. Not fearlessness, not certainty, just the willingness to see what you see and act on it even when it terrifies you. Even when you might be wrong. Even when being wrong means carrying weight forever.